Welcome to Barcelona and to the magnificent buildings of the Salmond. This World Heritage Site is thought to be the greatest example of the postmodern tradition of Catalan architecture. And that's highly appropriate because today we're going to talk about the future, and in particular the future of the Catalan economy. One of the features of the constitutional debate here in Catalonia is the number of world-renowned economists who've been active participants in that debate. Today we talked to just 3 of them. We asked them why they got involved in that debate and how do they see the future developing. But first, over to Tasmina in the studio with your tweets, your emails and your messages.
Last week's interview with President Torra was covered far and wide in a number of publications, both online and in print. El Confidencial, La Vanguardia, El Món, Canal República, El Periódico, VilaWeb, Daily Motion, The National in Scotland and Common Space. And also received a number of tweets and emails. First from Scott, who says, Independence Day last year, of course referring to Catalonia. Being there as I was really did make me think about politics, democracy and identity. How it arrives then is quickly removed. Food for thought indeed. Angela says, fantastic interview, keep up the good work. Thank you, Angela, we hope to. And then from John Mox, who says, looks to be a very interesting interview. Now that was before President Torra's interview was broadcast. So John, please do let us know if you enjoyed it. Now, you remember a couple of weeks ago, Alex also interviewed Henry McLeish, and I wanted to read out a few of the tweets he'd received in response to that. Lynn Finlayson says, great interview with Henry McLeish. Rees-Mogg would need more than a chaperone if he came to Scotland today. Oh, I'm not so sure. Maybe get him on your show, Alex. Well, maybe we will. Susan says, these dialogues are food for the soul. A fantastic Henry. I won't be drawn. McLeish and Salmond chew over UK politics, past and present. Thank you, Susan. And finally from Brona, who says, Henry McLeish, excellent discussion with Alex Salmond on the show tonight. Now, Professor Xavier Saleh Martin is one of the top economists in the world and is currently a professor at Columbia University, New York City. He's also taught at Yale, Harvard, and the Universitat Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona, and the Barcelona Graduate School of Economics. He was president of FC Barcelona during the electoral process of 2006 and remains a board member. A columnist for Spanish newspaper La Vanguardia, he also has a weekly slot on RAC1 and contributes regularly to CNN. Alex speaks to him in Barcelona.
You're one of the top international economists in growth and development. But what drove you into that field of economic science?
Well, I saw poverty for the first time. I actually went to, I studied here in Barcelona, my undergraduate studies. I went to Harvard to study with Mascolay, who's a prominent, most important mathematical economist in the world. And I traveled to Bolivia, and for the first time I saw poverty, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, real poverty. At the time, Bolivia was the poorest country in Latin America, and I was so devastated that I turned back and I said, no, economics has to be about solving these problems. I know mathematical economics is fun. It was like solving crossword puzzles for me. It was like fun, good, brain teasers. But economics has to be more than that.
The debate on independence for Catalonia has had a very strong economic dimension. What are the economics of Catalan independence?
The economic dimension has been diminishing over time. Initially, it was all about economics, about how much money Catalans pay in taxes and money that doesn't come back in the form in the form of investment or some other way. How Spain does not really represent us, not only because Spain doesn't do the right economics, the right economic policies for us, but Spain, it's been a disappointment. It's like I think of independence as a broken marriage. There is an economic argument, but mainly it's about feeling, right? I don't love you anymore. And yes, I promised when we got married that it would be forever. And yes, we voted the Constitution, or our parents voted the Constitution of Spain. And the argument is, since Catalonia voted for the Constitution, hence you have to stay. No, yes, I loved you. Yes, I promised. Yes, I swear it would be forever. But now it's over.
And I mean, your field in economics, where you've achieved so much renown, is in growth economics. So you would tend to thinking about the economic argument, you tend to be pursuing more what happens over a period of time than just a balance sheet calculation at one point in time. That's surely much more important. So what happened to Catalan economy over a period of time if, for example, it was independent?
There's no guarantee that our politicians, whenever we have an independent country, our politicians will choose the right policies. We are roughly the size of Switzerland or Portugal or Sweden or a little bit larger than Finland. Now, if we choose Swiss policies, we'll end up like Switzerland. They're one of the richest countries in the world, one of the most competitive, most productive. If we follow Portuguese policies, then we will end up like Portugal. Now, there's no guarantee that we will choose correctly, but we will make our own choices. The Spanish, they have a preference for, sending every single infrastructure through Madrid, where there's roads or highways or trains or high-speed trains, even planes, everything has to go through Madrid. And that's legitimate. They can have those preferences. Now, those are not our preferences. That's not what's good for our economy. That's not what's good for our citizens. 25% of exports come from Catalonia. We have only 16% of the population. So we are interested in having infrastructures, looking to Europe, looking north, not looking to Madrid.
But even if over a period of time, different economic choices led to more growth and a better result for Catalonia, there would be an inevitable period of dislocation. I mean, even an agreed process of independence like the Czech Republic and Slovakia all these years ago, the Velvet Divorce, involved some dislocation. There's not much sign that there would be a velvet divorce between Spain and Catalonia, so there must inevitably, you would have to factor in a period of some economic difficulty.
Since I'm a growth economist, I tend to look at the long run, okay? I have no doubt that in the long run, we would be way better off.
Says Catalonia would be better off than it would be as part of Spain as an independent country.
For the reasons I mentioned. I'm not talking about the money. Most people in Catalonia worry about the fiscal deficit, the amount of money that the Catalans pay in taxes that never comes back. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being able to choose the right policies, the right regulations, the right investments.
Few people seriously would argue that an economy the size of Catalonia couldn't be a perfectly viable country. Indeed, many economists would argue it's the perfect size, the golden size between 5 and 15 million, a lot of evidence for that. But is there really an argument that it would be worth the candle, the improvement, the economic improvement would be such that it would justify all the bother of setting up an independent state?
The size argument is completely silly. I mean, the size argument is, I worked for the World Economic Forum, the competitiveness index, the index of global competitiveness.
You jointly devised
Exactly. I'm the person who derived that index for the forum, okay? I still help them run this program. Nobody in the right mind can tell me that smaller countries perform worse than larger countries. During the 20th century, the forces that would help you if you are a large country are disappearing, right? Markets are no longer countries. Market is the world, or groups of countries, the European Union, or NAFTA. Environmental problems, right? Spain cannot fight climate change. We have to have groups of countries, the United Nations. Terrorism. Right? So the benefits of belonging to a large country are disappearing.
Given that you cited Switzerland as a model for best policy practice, would EFTA, which is obviously Switzerland's a member of, would that be a better place for Catalonia to be?
It doesn't have the best benefit, which is making decisions, right? Because you accept whatever the rules that other members decide, but you still have access to the market. You still have access to a world without borders. You have some of the benefits. You still have to pay, and you still have to accept the rules. The problem is that the rules you don't decide.
Now, can I ask about the role of academics in the constitutional debate in Catalonia? I mean, you are part of an academic grouping. What was the role of economists and political scientists and other academics? Did they contribute substantially to the debate, to the ongoing debate?
We created a group of economists called the Wilson Group that was mainly former Mascolade students or students of students, but it was not a group pro-independence. It was a group because some of the economists in that group are not pro-independence. They don't support independence. But it was a group of pro-choice.
So it was about the right to decide as opposed to what the decision might be.
Exactly. It's about the decision, and good decisions can only be made if citizens are well informed.
And did it have the desired effect on the overall debate? Did you manage to slay some of the canards and raise the tone of the debate?
I think that the debate has been decreasingly about economics. After October 1st, I think many people saw through Spain for the first time. Spain has been very good at disguising, at pretending to be a democratic country since 1975, since Franco died. But the true nature of Spain appeared that day, and we have seen it ever since. Sending, politicians who have done nothing to prison for 9 months now. Completely incomprehensible behavior. And the European judges are obviously showing that this is the case. There's no good legal reason to keep these people in jail.
You've been an unusual academic in many ways. I mean, you were president of FC Barcelona.
FC Barcelona was I was president by accident. FC Barcelona is like a little democracy. We have 180,000 members. We vote. We have political parties, and there are term limits.
It's a great advert for democracy then, because it's highly successful.
It's very successful, yeah. So what happened was that when the president tries to get re-elected, and he can only do that once. Now during the period of the electoral period, he has to quit. And then the treasurer becomes the president. So I was the accidental president for these 3 months.
So an accidental football superbo, but one of the world's most prominent development economists. So I have to ask you one last question. How close are we, in your estimation, to a full-scale trade war, and how damaging could that be to world economic growth prospects?
I don't know, because you're an economist, so. There's very few things that most economists agree on, and that is that a trade war is bad for everybody. It is crazy from an economist's point of view. It's crazy to see how politicians are not only doing certain things but reacting. When Donald Trump puts tariffs on steel, right? He's going to hurt the American people, right? Yes, he's going to protect the steel producers and maybe a few jobs. But of course, how do you do that? How do you protect? You protect by actually having everybody else pay higher prices, including the companies that use steel, the countries that produce cars and refrigerators. And who pays for these higher and more expensive cars and refrigerators? The American people. So essentially, he's taking money from the American people and giving it to these people that benefit. Now, obviously, it's politics. If you look at where the steel companies are, who are going to benefit, they are the swing states that gave him the presidency. And he says, okay, Californians are going to lose, but I don't care about Californians. They are Democrats anyway. So it makes sense from his narrow political view to do that. Now, what's incomprehensible is that then Europeans do the same thing, right? We're gonna put a higher price on bourbon. Now, who's gonna pay this higher price? The European citizens. So you are shooting yourself in the foot. Oh, I'm gonna retaliate by shooting myself in the foot. No, this is stupid. This is stupid. You shouldn't do that. Even if the president of the United States is crazy, let him be crazy. But don't bring this craziness back to Europe.
I don't know if I can do anything about the potential tariff on bourbon, but there's no suggestion there's going to be a tariff on Scotch as yet. And what you do with this quaich, which I'm delighted to present you with, is you put the Scotch, and only Scotch, in the quaich and pass it round your many friends.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being an Alex Salmond show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up after the break, I interview two further stars of this vigorous economic and political debate here in Catalonia. Join us then. Welcome back to the glorious surroundings of St. Pau in Barcelona, where I'm first joined by Professor Jaume Ventura, another distinguished economist and director of the Master's Programme in Barcelona for International Finance, Trade and Development. Hey, Jaume, thank you for coming to the Alex Salmond show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, I'm interested in why so many distinguished economists, such as yourself, contributed to the constitutional debate in Catalonia.
At the very beginning of the independence movement, there was the first reaction of the Spanish state was to bombard Catalan people with the ideas that Catalan independence would not be feasible from an economic viewpoint. A lot of very false, outright lies, I would tell, were published in newspapers continuously. And many of us that were looking at this issue from a more narrow academic standpoint or a more concrete way of thinking, we started to talk to each other,
so was it,
interact.
Like a community of Catalan, because I mean you spent most of your career in the United States, but a community of Catalan economists across the world from their various centres of research.
Indeed. Many of the Catalans that we are writing about Catalan independence, that we made the first calculations, that we come up with the starting results. Many of us were working abroad. It was a network of economists working in many places that we decided to say, how can it be that these lies are published in newspapers or people are starting to believe them? So we went and we decided to do some calculations, to write things.
This group of economists were successful in raising the level of discourse in terms of the constitutional debate?
I would modestly argue that the answer is a resounding yes, up to the point that 2 years later, let's say around 2014, even 2015, the economic debate stopped being a debate. Just let me give you like a simple example. A lot of people were arguing. I mean, for example, if you look at the newspapers in 2012, 2013, 2014, suddenly there would be all these big statements. In independent Catalonia, Catalonia would not be able to pay their pensions. Okay, that's a statement. And then you say, because the state does have all the pensions, and Catalonia would lose it. Now think about yourself. You're thinking, suddenly, imagine that I lose all my money in the bank. If I become independent, all the money that I have been saving over time in order to pay for my retirement, suddenly I'm going to lose it all. Obviously, you tell that to people, and people will become worried about. But this is a lie. Because pensions are not paid by funds that were collected in the past and now are put into investments and so on. The pensions that are being paid today are based on the taxes that are being collected today. So the pensions that my parents receive basically are based on the taxes on my salaries. If Catalonia becomes independent, the workers will remain in Catalonia and they will pay the taxes. And in fact, we made a very simple calculation. We decided to say, for each Catalan that is contributing, how much would the pensions be in separate systems? And we found one, that there are many younger Catalans. So Catalans, there are more young Catalans than in the rest of Spain.
Better demographics.
Exactly. So for starters, you already observe that there's going to be more people for every pension recipient. Second, among these young, there's less unemployment. So not only there are more, but they work more often. And third, they have a higher salary than in the rest of Spain. So if you stop and you separate, pensions in Catalonia would be about 10% higher than in the rest of Spain if the same rules remained. Obviously, the Catalan government can decide to raise pensions, can decide to decline, reduce pensions, but if the same rules that we have now in Spain, pensions would be 10% higher.
So Professor Ventura, can I take you on to some other current issues which our viewers are interested in? Brexit in Britain, how damaging economically do you think that could be from an independent standpoint, looking at that issue?
I think that there might be substantial losses for the UK from being separated for Europe, but I think actually that the big loss is going to be also for the European Union. I have always over the years felt, and perhaps that's because of my US education and my love for some of those principles, but I always felt that the UK had a very sensible position in many of the European issues, and that the UK has played a very important role in actually avoiding some of the strong arm government sort of policies that perhaps French and German are more likely to put on or to support.
Well, Professor Ventura, thank you so much for being my guest today. I hope whatever else happens in this prospective trade war, there's no suggestion of tariffs on Scotch whisky. Certainly that would be a disaster for the Alex Salmond quaich, which I'm delighted to present you with. You know the drill, only Scotch in that quaich, no other substance.
Thank you very much. I'll make sure that's the case.
Andrew Mas-Colell is a former finance councillor in the Catalan government and is one of the world's leading mathematical economists. He's the founder of the Barcelona Graduate School of Economics and a professor at Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona. His textbook on microeconomics is the most used postgraduate microeconomics textbook in the world. Here he now speaks to Alex.
Professor, welcome to the Alex Salmond Show.
Thank you for having me here.
I'm interested in why so many Catalan economists have taken part vigorously in the independence debate. But you, of course, actually were a government minister for 2 spells, so you made that transition from academic economist to government minister. What brought you into public service?
Public service is important. If I have to be very subjective, when I was a youngster, was very politically involved, so politics has always attracted me. And after a long period in academia, there are some personal characteristics which are there. I believe strongly that there are many things that can only be done from government.
That transition from being an academic, a theorist, a theoretical economist,
yes,
full of Greek letters in your equations, to actually the application of economics through policy. How easy was that transition?
It can be done. You have to develop some skill of talking to people and of expounding ideas. Economic ideas can be explained simply. One can make people feel sure about them if you tell them that there are some Greek letters behind what I am saying.
And many people would argue that your example, Andrea, was perhaps part of the inspiration why so many Catalan economists took part in the constitutional debate. I mean, the fact that you'd been a political practitioner encouraged
yes.
Members of academia to get involved.
No, I doubt that. Look, half the population in Catalonia are pro-independence. So the logic says that half the economists in Catalonia are pro-independence. And there are many economists in Catalonia, there are many good economists, and it's a profession, an academic profession which is very internationalized, lots of PhDs from everywhere.
Can I ask you one question about how an economist estimates the effects of Catalonian independence? Presumably you have to trade off the potential short-term disruption, depending how a settlement was reached, against a potential medium-term benefit from perhaps improved decision-making.
This balance has to be estimated, and some of the issues is one, we have never contemplated leaving the European Union. So any scenario involving independence will have to be a scenario, therefore, where some kind of mediation, there will have to be some kind of mediation of Europe, because we don't want to go to be outside the European Union for economic reasons, but also for other reasons. We are now experiencing what it means to be under the protection of the European Union. There are people in jail, there are people in exile, but you can count them with a couple of hands. And we have seen what the judiciary has done in Germany, in Britain, in Scotland.
So in any scenario, you see Catalonia's future within the European Union. But of course, the United Kingdom is just in the process of leaving the European Union. What's your assessment of the potential economic damage for the United Kingdom?
I cannot see how the United Kingdom could possibly benefit from that. It's too large to become a Singapore, and it is surrounded by Europe. It's totally entangled by Europe. It has benefited a lot from trade, from educated immigration from Europe. So it seems to me a very misguided move.
Now, I don't know what you'll be toasting in Catalonia in the near future. I hope it's success. But when you do, then please use the quaich. You know the drill. Whiskey in the quaich. Pass it around your close friends. And thank you so much for appearing in the Alex Salmond Show.
I'll keep it very much in mind.
Thank you.
Coming up on next week's show, we ask the essential question of what is Catalonia? One thing is for certain, there's more to it than FC Barcelona. Is it a geographical construct, an autonomous region of Spain, or an ancient European nation? And are its politics a problem or an opportunity in this troubled Europe? We asked the people who should help us in this quest, the poets, the journalists and the academics, to answer the question of what is Catalonia.
One of the best film noirs of the immediate post-war period was The Third Man, starring Orson Welles. And in that film, Orson Welles, who's a really nasty piece of work, makes the point that in the bloodthirsty rule of the Borgias in Italy, it produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. Meanwhile, 500 years of peace and stability in Switzerland produced the cuckoo clock. A bit of an exaggeration, but there's something in the argument that it's times of turbulence which produce great art and also great ideas. And I suspect that the world-renowned economists that we've spoken to today only got involved in the Catalonian political process because of the interesting times that Catalonia was going through. One thing's for certain, the economics as practiced in Catalonia is not the dismal science, but the science of hope and anticipation of better times to come. So from Tasmina and me and the whole crew at the Alex Salmond Show, it's goodbye for now.